So this is the first video in what may end up being a pretty long series, because it's a pretty broad topic.
And something we're very passionate about.
Yes, and something we've done for quite a long time. And we're not experts on all of it, but we know enough information to be dangerous. We'll just leave it at that. But today's video is the first, episode, installment of our Seed Saving 101 series. This has kind of come about, we were actually on Jules Small Gardening's Garden Chat, and basically did a podcast discussion with him on this very topic. We'll link that above, and definitely go and check out his garden podcast series, because there's a lot of information, not just seed saving. There's a lot of really good garden information. It was tough to condense a lot of this into a short discussion, so we kind of figured, why don't we elaborate on this? And so here we are. This first episode is basically about the biggest question probably you could ask is, why save seeds? I'm going to start out too by saying this series is more or less intended for, with a few exceptions, is more or less intended for like annual and biannual type, what you typically think of as sort of like garden vegetables. We may branch into some other stuff later, like some woody plants and stuff, but that gets a little more difficult, so we're kind of keeping this a little bit focused. So back to the question. Why save seeds? Well, I think we can break it down into kind of four main points. And sorry, these 4 main points are not in any particular order. Point number 1, and I think probably the point you hear the most about, but may not resonate a lot with everybody, and that's completely fair, is you're maintaining something, often something rare. So some of these varieties of vegetables are basically endangered. So, buying seeds every year is not necessarily a viable option. That's a very noble cause, and it definitely feeds into some of the other practical application, but it's not really probably the biggest reason in our mind anyways to do it, but it's definitely a consideration. And of course with that comes the notion of trying to keep the varieties and the cultivars and whatnot pure, so that whatever special trait they have, you maintain. So there's the first. The second and third kind of tie into each other, for lack of a better way to put it. You tend to be able to select, and that selection is usually for the qualities that you like the best. So you can select the best of the best and kind of do that little bit of improvement on your own for what works well for you. The other side to that is, while you're doing that and while you're saving seeds, those plants tend to adapt really quite quickly in a lot of cases to your growing conditions and your gardening methods and all that sort of stuff. So you usually end up left with varieties that basically do well for you. And what's kind of interesting about that, when you're buying seeds, you'll often find, and there's nothing wrong with buying seeds. I mean, we all do it, and we're all going to continue to do it as long as we can. But when you often buy the seeds for the first time, they're not adapted to your garden. They're not adapted to your microclimates. It's like
starting at ground zero.
Yeah, you're basically starting at ground zero, and if you do it every year, you may not get the same results. You still may not get the same results every year because of climate and whatnot with things that you've saved, but they tend to, talking about tomatoes as a prime example, they tend to be more vigorous, and they just do better after a couple of years of propagating them. And I think that kind of bleeds into the fourth and probably the most important aspect of why this is something that new gardeners or seasoned gardeners or any gardeners should consider, is it gives you the ability to propagate things that you like, things that do well for you, things that you like the taste of, things that produce whatever crop it is that you enjoy, whether that's a large main crop, really prolific producer for a main crop, or maybe it's a specialty item that, is that treat that you love getting every summer when it's in season and growing well. It gives you that ability to keep that going. so that you're not necessarily for a lot of varieties anyways, and a lot of types of vegetables, that you can kind of be somewhat independent of your own little population, and you can grow that for as long as you would like to. And I guess kind of a fifth reason for that is kind of tied into that last one of you can keep what you enjoy and what you like going, is then you're not dependent on always having to buy seeds, which is, depending on the year, there's a lot of factors to that. You might not be able to always get what you want every year if you're just buying it. So I think that's kind of a brief summary of the why. It's kind of a quick and dirty summary, but hopefully some of those points kind of resonate with you if you've never done seed saving before. Essentially, you're going to see a theme through this whole series that we highly recommend it. We've seen some of the benefits of saving seeds. On the flip side, there is some difficulties that comes with it, with some species or some varieties. And probably the disclaimer here too is you may be more limited, i.e. it may be hard to grow 30 different kinds of tomatoes based on your space, but you tend to narrow it down to the things, again, going back to point number 4, that you like the best, whether you like the taste, whether you like how they grow, they're easy for you, they're very productive. You tend to whittle it down to those few things that you really like, they do well for you, and I guess those are the ones that probably make the most sense to save because they're working for you. That's episode 1. Stay tuned for more episodes on this in the near future, and